But is there a kind of car or a category of cars that you feel to be most collectible?
It's interesting. I just got back from Hershey and I was at Monterey this year and all of that. The collector part exchange right now is mostly focused on European sports cars from the 40s to the 80s. Just as a starting point, we'll get into antique cars and U.S. cars and all of that. But I honestly think that's probably the most collectible range as well, because there are lots of different varieties of cars. So it isn't like, when you get into American cars, like how many Mustangs were produced? I mean, there were probably more Mustangs produced than there were cars in Italy produced in any given year, So it kind of becomes, there's very minor variations. It's like, oh, you've got a little different engine setup or a different transmission or a sports package or whatever. In the European stuff, there's so much variety that there is really uniqueness and differentiation within the market. So I think that drives up the valuations and makes them much, much more collectible.
So is your blanket answer European?
European sports cars from probably the 40s through the 70s, I'd say, maybe 80s. And it doesn't have to be a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. My Alfa Romeo, I don't know, I spent $17,000 on it. It's not like a very valuable car, but I tell you, on my blog, I wrote a love letter to it the other day because I took it on a tour and it was so much fun to drive that car on that tour, even though it only has 85 horsepower. I think it really annoys me watching all these new hypercars and things like that. They are marvels. They are engineering marvels, but they kind of take the driving out of it and they become basically a marketing ploy for fast 0 to 60 times or Nürburgring laps and things like that. And you can't enjoy them in the real world. You just can't. Like, even if you go to a track, you don't have the capacity, I bet, to drive those cars to their extent. And if you try, you're going to pay dear. So
that's right.
To take an 85 horsepower 4-door sedan Alfa Romeo and rip it on some back roads, I'm going to be having a ball. Whereas somebody in a modern Corvette's just going to be cruising and drinking that cup of Starbucks. I'm going to be downshifting, blipping the throttle, pulling it, trying to carry momentum through the corners, and I will never exceed the speed limit, and I'll be having a blast.
Back to CPX.
You bet.
What else is on there besides parts?
Yeah, well, we've already talked a little bit about, we've got some project cars on there, and that's becoming a more popular category. We have, I think something that really makes us special and different is we offer new parts, new old stock parts, rebuilt parts, and the thing that I'm actually most excited about is we offer services right alongside the parts. So sometimes people go out and they search for a new part when they don't realize it, but they can take the old part that they have and send it to somebody and have it rebuilt, and it'll come back operating like new, but it's still the same exact part. It's a much cheaper price, and it's the maximum originality. So we've got folks who do that or build upholstery, like custom upholstery. So you can order people to make you a leather upholstery for your vintage car, and you can do it right through our site. And, another thing that we've got going on is automobilia is really popular, and there is a fair number of books and manuals and different items on there that I think are really fun, and I believe we're going to get a lot of pickup from people listing automobilia on there.
I like that. So it's it's your online exchange and I'm not trying to downgrade it, but automotive flea market. I mean, where you
no
the automobilia, the vintage toys, maybe.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot of car models on there and dinky toys and all sorts of stuff. And there's when I see some of those come on, I get pretty tempted. And models, we just sold a very expensive model. Like somebody ordered there was a $750 model of a Rolls Royce that was up there. It's a 1/5 scale, so it's a really large model and complex. That's why it costs so much. And yeah, just sold. So yeah, it's fun to see those sorts of things on there, because I don't know anybody who's into cars who doesn't love to have I'm looking at the wall behind you, and you've got, that ceramic car behind you and a bunch of posters and all sorts of cool stuff.
You're right. I love it. I mean, if I had unlimited space and unlimited budget, less kids.
Yeah.
I want to tell my kids, do you know how many pedal cars I could have if you weren't here? Okay.
You know it.
I'll make sure to remind them every day.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.